to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hello everybody and welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast. So it's the first week in September and I'm launching some new products. I've got 2 new audio courses. Previously everything I've done has been with people, working with people directly, but now I've launched 2 products which are audio courses, so you can be sent some audio every day for 10 or 15 days, and there's written information as well. It's a bit like the podcast really, but it's focusing on a specific topic. So if you're interested in improving your business email communications, or you want to know how to make the best of networking opportunities, face-to-face networking opportunities, you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/audio and have a look at the new courses. So for the last few weeks we've been looking at telephone skills, and today we're going to start something else. This is going to be a standalone session today, and it's a topic that often comes up when I'm working with customers. They say they've learned a lot, they can read and understand things, but speaking is something which they find quite difficult. So general conversation or presenting, but mainly just the idea of having to speak English. And I can understand this because when I started learning German, it was an issue for me, and then when I started learning Turkish as well, that was another problem. It didn't get easier the second time round. I found as a learner that my speaking skills were the ones that developed last. So my listening and my reading and writing have always been better than my speaking skills. With German it's not a problem now, but I noticed when I started to learn Turkish that it was exactly the same pattern, and speaking is the thing that I find hardest. So I decided to have a look at some of the reasons why people find speaking difficult and what we can do about them. So I came up with 5 problems that people experience. 1, I don't want to make mistakes and feel stupid. 2, I don't get enough practice. 3, I can't say what I want to say, so I don't say anything. 4, I can't think fast enough and then I get frustrated. And 5, my vocabulary is too small and I don't want to sound like a little child. So let's look at those in turn. So 1, I don't want to make myself look stupid, and that's something that everybody feels sometimes. They think, oh, I might say the wrong thing, or I might get mixed up in the middle of the sentence, but it's normal, and it's particularly a problem if you speak a lot and you're confident and happy that you can express yourself well in your native language, because then you have to think how you would say all these things in the new language, and it can be a bit frustrating at times. And for those of us that are perfectionists too, then it's also hard because we want to do things really well, and that's good sometimes because it makes us learn things thoroughly, but at other times it can be a real problem because it stops us having a go, just trying. You've got an idea in your head but you don't know if it's exactly right, so you don't say anything, and that's not helping you to learn if you think like that. And particularly if you're speaking in a business English context, in business situations, you don't want to feel vulnerable in front of your colleagues. I understand that it's bad enough in a classroom situation with people you don't know, but if it's your colleagues that you work with as well, then you do sometimes think, oh, I won't say anything because if I do say something in front of them, it might be wrong, and then that will change how they think of me. But I've learned several things as I've gone through my language journey, and that is people rarely judge you as harshly as you judge yourself. Our mistakes can be our best teachers, and it does get easier the more you do it. And I know it's easy to say that, particularly as a language trainer, but as a language learner as well, I know it does, because now I'm not afraid to speak German, whereas previously I was. Now I've done it so much that it's become normal for me. Okay, the second one, I don't get enough practice. And with this one, you need to be realistic with your expectations, because if you don't speak English for days or weeks and then you expect to go into a situation and speak beautifully, Maybe you can, maybe it's so ingrained in your mind that you can, but often, particularly when you're beginning to learn a language and getting fluent, it doesn't work like that. It needs to be something that happens little and often, and then it's easier to speak. So if you want to speak well at an important event or a meeting or something at work, then it's really good to get the practice in somewhere else where it's not as important. So you may have some activities in your town, you may have a language partner with whom you can practice, you may have friends that speak English. There are a number of different ways that you can do it, but don't try to get your practice in this important time when it counts. And don't think that you can just switch your brain into English and go when you haven't spoken any English for 3 weeks or something like that, because generally it doesn't work like that. Okay, the third one. I can't say what I want to say, so I don't say anything. And I've been guilty of this. I've had loads of ideas and thought, I'm not quite sure about this particular word, and so I don't say anything. And I think a lot of us have experienced this at some point as well. So sometimes people just go back to their native languages and explain it in that way, or sometimes people don't say anything at all. And I'm too stubborn to just revert to English if I'm supposed to be speaking German. So in my case, it meant I didn't say anything. But it doesn't have to be like that. Perhaps you can't speak about something in as much detail as you'd like, but you can probably get the main ideas across if you think differently. So if you break it down to the key points. What are the key points of this story? What do I want to achieve if I'm making a suggestion about how we do things? What are the simplified reasons for why I don't want to do something? If you break it down and then try to communicate those ideas and reasons in English, it's much easier than trying to think about all the things that you would say in your own native language. And similarly, if you forget a word, there are so many words that you probably know that you can explain something in a different way, describe something. If you don't know a specific word, you can describe what this thing looks like or what this thing does, and then you don't need to resort back to your native language. You can still get the idea across in English, but just with different words than you would have chosen if you had been speaking your native language. Number 4, I can't think fast enough and then I get frustrated. So if you've had practice with writing, if you've written emails before, then you know that there is less pressure. Okay, you've committed the words to writing, and if there are mistakes, everyone can see them, but you do have more time with writing. You can consider your response, you can check it, you can look up words, and you don't have any of that in a spoken conversation. You just have to be spontaneous and reply. So speaking puts you under more pressure in that way because you have to give an immediate response. But some people make mistakes that make this actually harder for themselves. So they sometimes try to build the whole sentence in their head and then say it. And that's hard, because if you try to do that in your own native language, it's hard if you keep a whole sentence in your head and then say it. Or sometimes people translate directly rather than thinking in English. And I know at the beginning it's hard to think in another language, but if you can try and get into the habit of thinking in English and not translating, you'll make your life so much easier, because then you'll be pulling from the pool of vocabulary that you do know, rather than trying to think, oh, what's the word for? So even if it is a bit more simplified at first, that's okay, because you can develop your skills. But if you try to translate word for word and then to speak, then you are actually making life harder for yourself than it needs to be, because it will take longer, it may not flow as well, because some things really don't translate very well, and translating is a skill. And number 5, my vocabulary isn't developed enough. And this can be a problem if you're trying to talk about something and you just don't have the vocabulary to talk about that. That can be an issue, and this is where other skills can come in. You can maybe read articles on this topic, or listen to podcasts about it, or find information about it, so that you're using your other skills like reading, for example, and you're building up your vocabulary that way, thinking about important words, looking at how other people talk about this particular topic. So it doesn't necessarily have to be speaking to build your vocabulary. You can do other things like reading, but then you will need to get used to hearing yourself talking about these things so that when it comes to having to do it in a real context, it will be easy for you because you've done it before. If you are being asked to converse on a level that's higher than you can manage, then maybe you do need some help as well. You may not be able to do it all on your own, and it may be quicker if you get some help. So that could be some, like a language course or something like that, or it could be practicing with somebody else so that they can help you, they can advise you on your sentences and what sounds good, how you could improve them. But with things like that, you don't be afraid to ask for help, because often with other people, whether it is something official like a language course or something less formal like a language exchange, other people can help you, and it will probably be quicker to do it that way too, because you'll be getting their input as well. And sometimes this problem happens in language exchanges. I've been in language exchanges where the other person has been talking a lot, and I couldn't respond. I could understand, and this was probably because my listening skills were so much better than my speaking skills. People sometimes overestimated my speaking skills, but I found that really demotivating, because the other person would say a lot about a particular topic, and I would just have one sentence in my head or something like that. And if you are working with somebody and it's going like that, then try to address it. It's not always easy, but try to get the other person to maybe say less at once before they ask you a question, or to simplify what they're saying a bit so that you can converse on the same level. Because the idea of them being there, if it's a language exchange, is for them to help you. You can't necessarily do that at work, but you can do it in a situation that you're organising. So I will never say that speaking is easy, because it's one of the things that I've struggled with in the past, but I can say that it does get easier, because I've also had that experience now. I'm much happier speaking German, and I don't think about it anymore. And if you look back to the beginning of my language learning journey, it certainly wasn't like that. So it does get easier if you put yourself in the position where you have to do it, because it only gets easier with practice. And also it can be fun. If you can find some people with whom you enjoy spending time, or you can find an activity about which you enjoy speaking, then it can be fun, because you're enjoying yourself as well and getting the speaking practice at the same time. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has given you some ideas or some tips that you can try, and I'll see you again next week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.